Weed Meets Wall Street, where we're going to examine the latest cannabis and hemp investment trends. Interested in that as well. That's receiving a lot of attention from Wall Street. Our esteemed panelists are Terry Booth, CEO of Audacious and Australis. We have Chip Daniels, founder of State Stox Group. We have Steve Abraham, head of corporate development and investor relations for the Blinc Group. And Jay Czarkowski, founding partner of Canna Advisors. And Carl Cameron, who will serve as our moderator for today. So thank you very much, Carl. You guys are in great hands. We're going to take about 50 minutes for this panel, and then we're going to take about 10 minutes after for some Q&A. Enjoy.
Here's your phone. Hey, everybody, I'm Carl. So this is about markets. This is about Wall Street. This is about New York City, the greatest advertising and marketing community on the planet. And it ain't doing enough for the cannabis industry. We've got a panel of experts here who have a variety of skills throughout the cannabis industry. And by the way, if you want to be on a market, you got to go to Canada. This is not good for the United States of America for people who want to be involved in major finance and have to go overseas to do it. We're sitting in the city that makes brands. They may be cultivating out west, but brands come from this city. And the finance is absolutely important. We're going to start just with each of you gentlemen trying to explain when and if Wall Street will open up and give the cannabis industry its due and how that can happen, because it's been slow and there's a tremendous amount of distractions for our government. The White House and Congress have a lot to do, and they sometimes overlook cannabis because they've got bigger problems. We need to have a national project. These gentlemen have been working in the space for a long, long time, and so without me going any further, Terry, let's just start with you, and we'll come down. When, where, and how will there be Wall Street support that rivals with the other major existing entities?
Sure. Loaded question. I could probably take a half hour of your time. I won't do that. Cannabis companies are already on the NYSE. Those cannabis companies are from Edmonton, Alberta, and all around Canada. Listed on the NYSE because it's federally legal. And the NYSE actually, when I was with Aurora, would not let us enter the US and touch the plant. That's how Australis was born. We did a spin out of a company, Australis, and we listed it on the CSE, which does allow us to be in America and touching the plant. So that's one thing. They're already there. They're just waiting for federal legality. Now, how that looks, if it's just in the medical space at first, or they go full blown and legalize this wonderful plant, then that would be a big thing. But you know, as you say, it looks like it's miles away when they've got all the things going on at this government. It'll have to be a bipartisan bill. I'm always intrigued by the politics in America. I watch Fox and CNN. I go back and forth, and it's two different countries, and you wonder, you know, why there's divisiveness when your media are so one-sided or the next. So it's a hill to climb, but this space is as small today as it will ever be. I say that often, and I mean it. Countries are opening up to medical cannabis. Thailand recently, we hope to see an announcement on June 9th in Thailand, legalization of cannabis. They've adopted the World Health Organization's take on ingestible CBD. So it's happening, and certainly America is happening. And here we are sitting in New York, and New York State are going ahead with adult usage cannabis. They have a reg drafted, not released. You have New Jersey with a released adult usage state, adult usage, right? Recreational cannabis, as they call it. But it's only a matter of time. The Supreme Court, and Clarence Thomas was the one that said, what are you doing, America? And he's a Republican. You got 35 states where you can sit on your step and smoke a joint and not have anybody bother you. You've got the DEA taking a totally hands-off approach to cannabis, yet you can't have a simple thing like the SAFE Act passed where you can only collect cash for the sale of it. There's been murders occur. Lots of robberies have occurred for sure because of the cash business, not able to put in your debit card. So I think that one will get fixed first, in my opinion. It's only a matter of time. It's not an if, it's a when. And as the space flattened out, I think it's bottomed out. So the opportunities are there. You have to look at your creative deals. You certainly have to look at companies that made it into New York and made it into New Jersey, because those are two pivotal states, in my opinion. They don't have a gray market grow here as much as they do in Cali and British Columbia and Colorado. So all the weed coming into New York State is from those states. So I do see that changing, of course, when you guys start growing your own.
Thank you. It's funny, I just want to parse your words for a second, if you don't mind, which is, you said, when will Wall Street wake up? And I think that's sort of half the question. I think the other half of the question is, when do the equities move, and when can operating companies attract capital? And I don't think they're necessarily the same thing, because I think there's a tremendous pool of private capital that exists in the marketplace. And there are now becoming reasonable ways for an average person to invest in the space, whether it's owning one of the ETFs, whether it's owning a Canadian entity. You can do it. Yes, there are significant blockades to it. There's lots of extra compliance. There's a lot of brokerage houses that won't clear for you. Honestly, that's part of what makes me excited about investing in the industry, because those issues will go away. So I think part one of the question is, when does that world of private investors, and family offices are becoming more and more sophisticated. There is a lot of private wealth in this company, and the entire market cap of this industry, talking about public entities, just isn't that large. So I think that's sort of part one. And in terms of answering your question more specifically, I think it doesn't necessarily require full federal legalization, but I think it requires what we typically talk about as federal permissibility, which is, the Banking Act, which is some level of understanding. Obviously, descheduling or rescheduling could accomplish that. And then I think the world starts to open, right? Then I think the world really starts to open, because for either a company operating or an investor considering investing in the space, there are so many blockades. Trying to get benefits for your employees, there's only a couple of EPOs or PPOs you can work with. Finding companies that'll sort of work with QuickBooks so you can do your taxes, the number of firms or law firms or accountants that will work with you. So there's tremendous structural issues that need to be resolved. Those start to go away. But again, I've been a professional investor in many different ways for 30 years, and I don't know that I've ever seen a bigger disconnect between sort of the fundamentals of operating companies and how they're valued in public markets right now. To have companies trading at 5, 6, or under 10 times 2023 earnings with 280E in there is sort of silly. It's sort of below sort of cash replacement rate.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so this is, I take issue a little bit with your question as well, that Wall Street doesn't look for early stage companies that don't do so well with early stage companies. Wall Street does better with companies that already have gotten started and have some traction. Okay? And, oh, can you hear me now? Is that better? Sorry about that, everyone. I just made the point that Wall Street works best at companies that already have traction and then taking those companies to another level. So the biggest problem is the federal restrictions, the legalization on a federal level. So that means that everything that has to be done on a state level, and it complicates things for companies that already have the challenges of getting started and growing. So my bio says that I head up State Stox Group, but I also am managing director of Solomon Encore, the modern Solomon Brothers. And so you'll find that most Wall Street firms, of course, they're interested in cannabis, but they, as much as investors, are waiting to see how things shake out. So I think a lot of people are waiting to see. We happen to take a very active role, and we put state stocks together, for example, to fund companies that are in a space like this.
Thanks, Chip. Well said. So I've been in this industry since 2009, so I've seen quite the evolution. In terms of weed meets Wall Street, I kind of feel like weed met Wall Street many, many years ago, and they never really quite hit it off, right? It's like, you know, a couple people in high school, they go to the same high school, they know each other, but they don't really hang around. You know, how is that going to change? You know, it certainly pains me to think of some great American companies, GTI, Cresco, Trulieve, there's others, there's many others, and they have to list, if they want to be public, they have to list on the Canadian exchange, and that's just wrong. These American companies should, of course, be on the American exchanges. Now, I will mention that Wall Street does seem to be interested in certain public companies, American companies. In fact, and Chip, maybe even know a little bit about this. I've been trying to look into it, but I guess, what is it, Bright Green Cannabis just listed on NASDAQ 2 weeks ago. They had a market cap 2 weeks ago of well over $1 billion. And you know what they do? They don't do anything. So they have no revenue. So I'm not sure why they're on NASDAQ. They were underwritten by E.F. Hutton. So, you know, Wall Street certainly is getting involved, but there's certainly a long, long way to go. I think if we had some federal movement, safe banking, et cetera, that would probably go a long way to help and make that happen, but it's certainly long overdue.
So, that's just the beginning of this. For those of you who are looking for significant backing in finance, be prepared to ask a couple of questions in a moment. But I'm still wondering if anybody can come up with any type of a feasible timeline wherein there will be access for cannabis here in the markets.
When you say markets, what do you mean by
the
markets?
big ones, NASDAQ.
Yeah, there are some cannabis companies on the NASDAQ, but they don't touch the plant. So that little rule of touching the plant. How many people here are looking to get into the business? With a show of hands. Okay, so that's a lot. And it's not easy to get into this business, but if you learn about the plant and you learn, if you have money, you're in a very good position, but don't blow it, don't waste it. It's precious when you get it. You know, if you're looking for angel investors, that's a little bit different than looking for the markets. Trying to go public when you're a startup, very difficult to do. You know, public is a better way to invest. You have an exit ability. So you really need to have a great story and a great business plan and a great look forward. New York, you mentioned, is going to be all about brands. I think that's your turning point. I really think New York State coming in with adult usage. You know, we're going to be selling cannabis in New York State in this calendar year through the hemp licensing. The social equity program that New York State has set up is a good one. It sounds like it's going to be a successful one. They have to get educating, and they have to do that fast. You don't want a situation like Illinois where it was a total crash. And, you know, it's fundamentally an excellent business to get into. As far as access to big capital, it's there now. The people that are getting the money are the big companies. You know, Audacious is just a little pubco, and we're struggling to get cash. You know, we're doing a convert. You don't want to do a cap raise at these stock prices because it just liquidates you to nothing. But if I learned anything in the early days of Aurora, we didn't have any money. I'm an electrician. I'm not a New York banker. And you need to know your business. And you need to know where your business is going. So learn about it. Learn about the plant. Pick up the pharmacopoeia for bud that's issued by some great ladies in California. Read about the plant. Know about it. Know about your retail. If you're getting into retail, you know, location, right? Educate yourselves. Make sure you have the right softwares. There's lots online, and a lot of bullshit online too about what to learn, and you have to, take everything with a grain of salt. Don't spend big bucks on education. It's all there. You just have to find it. But I do think New York, New Jersey, come on, man. Those are two key states on the East Coast that they're going to drive this financings. These financings.
And what I'll chip in is that for the group of people of you that just raised your hands, the public markets are only somewhat relevant. The reality is the most of the money that you raise, you're going to be raising privately. The first round of it to just sort of get the business not built, just sort of established, get your applications finished, get them submitted to do that work, that's most likely going to come from friends and family. Now, if you're in a position where you don't have those types of friends and family, there are some organizations within New York. There's Canna Gather. I can't think of sort of networking opportunities that people like me and as lots of people in the industry, I wear a couple of hats. I'm a partner in a small venture capital fund, and I'm also, work at an ancillary company that's private. We make cartridges and the batteries. So that's really where your money is probably more likely going to come from. And the reason the public markets do matter to you is that creates the halo, right? If they're all going high and doing really well, it's easier to raise money. But my suggestion to you would be, following up on what my colleague here said, is focus on your business and be able to tell a compelling story. And the one piece of advice I will leave you with is if you're a new company and you're raising money, the number one most important thing when you sit with a potential investor is that you establish your credibility. Because they're not investing in the plant, they're not investing in your grow, they're fundamentally investing in you. And if you come in and you say, well, I'm going to plant some plants and they're going to grow and I'm going to harvest them, and I saw this thing on TV and this guy grew like 80,000 plants. Or if you come in and say, look, I think my yields are going to start out at, about a third of what they should be, and as I crossbreed and I do this, I think I can grow it over time, which is why I think this is what my 3 years look like, and your story matches the numbers that you present. That is really where I would spend my time when you're pitching, because they are going to fundamentally make an investment in you, not necessarily cannabis itself.
Anybody with a hand up or a question specifically, or I'm going to continue to question these guys?
Quickly to what Steve said. You all have a story to tell. Tell it. Yeah. Tell your story. Get in the face of people. Get out there. Attend these things. Attend these conferences. Tell your story. You're going to get better at it. When I first got up on these stages, I was spitting dry dust. I couldn't get the words out no matter how hard I tried. It's scary at first. Tell your story if you believe in it. Look people in the eye. You need money, and you think you can make some back. It's not just about getting into a fun thing where you're going to go get high and get some free weed and whatnot. You have to be serious, and at the same time, if you've got some culture and community about you, spread that word. Spread the faith.
I'll just repeat your question. What if your story is not a great story?
What if it's not prison for somebody who's I
think
got
you've
you.
got a great story.
So
then.
if somebody's got criminal background, or if somebody in the family does, right? That's supposed to be a bad thing, but that's not how it's working in some places. Gentlemen, explain it.
Sure. In New York State, to be a retailer, there's a number of requirements that you have to meet, and one is having been convicted of a cannabis crime, or having a family member that's been convicted of a cannabis crime. We're looking at the retail space in New York, and we've engaged Bertha Lewis to help us with that, to reach out to communities, to start getting the people that are going to own the majority of these businesses educated and running them. So your story is actually compelling in this particular state, and you have to tell it. Be brave with what, how you were disenfranchised. Why are 80% of people that are incarcerated for cannabis people of color? Right? It's a crime. What's going on here in the States? Being what?
Yes.
100%. 100%. So crack that egg. Why are the faces out here more white than black? Right? In a state that has an excellent social equity program. You have to get out there. You have an amazing opportunity to get into this space. The state are doing the right thing finally, and I think you'll see that when America kicks in on it as well.
Yeah, can I just add to that for a second? I think your question, if I heard it correctly, was, but you'll be judged. And the answer is yes, you will be. I think it would be sort of naive to not assume that. Now, the reality is everybody who goes to get money is judged on many things. What has happened and what historical is wrong, New York is obviously working to correct it. So honestly, I would just be upfront about it. I wouldn't be embarrassed by it. I would just sort of say, this happened, here's what I learned from it, and this is what I'm doing. And you know, look, it happened, it's your past, tell your story, why that helps you. But yes, you know, unfortunately you will be judged, but so would I if I was opening a car wash and, you know, and I was doing other things. You'll maybe judged more harshly by some people. Find the people who will judge you less. But again, just be upfront. You have nothing to hide about this.
You were brave standing up saying that.
Exactly.
Perfect.
So let me start. Oh, do you have a question?
We just have one more question. Go ahead. Sorry.
My question is this. We're actually from Mississippi, and SB 2095 passed, and our application opportunity started 1 June, so that's yesterday. So for startup companies in Mississippi, there are a few bigger companies that have been laying dormant waiting for the bill to pass that are already set up. But for individuals like a smaller group, how do we connect with investors like you? Do your platform reach that far south? Your funding?
You guys know about the state regs? I do, but I don't want to hog the stage if you guys know what he's asking here.
The question was, he's sort of a small person in Mississippi. How does he find investors? Do you guys do that?
Go ahead, share.
So you would be, I don't know what stage you're at in your business, but if you're at an early stage, you'd want to connect with angel investors and other. What stage are you at, sir?
Mississippi.
You're in Mississippi. Yep.
Senate Bill 2095,
Yep.
application started being received yesterday.
This gentleman would like to go for a license in Mississippi. Mississippi opened a round of applications just yesterday. So Mississippi's unique. There's not going to be any limits on licenses at the state level in Mississippi. So, you know, it is yet to be seen how truly competitive and difficult it's going to be to get a license in Mississippi. But there's certainly going to be a number available. Now, in terms of funding, I can tell you when I started my first grow, my first dispensary in Colorado, there wasn't a whole lot of money out there for folks new to the industry. You know, I had a little bit of cash. I had some credit cards. When that was exhausted, of course, we went to friends and family. And just like raising money in any other situation, it's all about telling a compelling story, having the passion and demonstrating that passion to succeed. And, you know, basically going to people that have some cash and convincing them to give it to you to move forward with your vision.
Let me just ask a question before we get to other questions. How many people here already have a business with revenue that's being generated right now and is looking for funding? So you have a business and you're looking for expansion capital. Okay, because this session is about Wall Street, and that's what Wall Street looks for. There's a whole segment of people who are looking for early stage startup capital, but Wall Street doesn't fund early stage startup capital. Wall Street funds businesses that already have revenue, have gotten started, and are looking to grow to the next level. So, in fact, that's what State Stox was designed to do. What's necessary, because New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ are so big that they don't serve the smaller companies, the fast-growing companies that need capital, that want to raise maybe $30, $40, $50 million, not $400, $500, $600 million. So there's a need for a new type of micro marketplace that brings investors together with those companies that are fast-growing companies and that can serve an industry like this one. So that's why we designed State Stox. There are there are over 600,000 investors that are interested in the kinds of companies that State Stox brings forward. State Stox is a platform. Think of it like a micro stock exchange, like a mini version of the New York Stock Exchange. So when the question is, when will Wall Street be ready for this? State Stox launches in a month, and State Stox is like a micro version of the New York Stock Exchange.
So,
This gentleman here, yep.
so to follow up with what you just said, what about the mom and pop stores that are trying to invest with the friends and family and trying to start up? So once we are in place, set in place, and have operations running with a storefront as a dispensary, and while we're waiting for the licenses, because right now we're only dealing with the hemp license, with the CBD. So once we're operational, how can we reach out and get those fundings?
Okay, so this is a new business area with hundreds of people that are all going to have licenses and looking to grow. My advice to everyone who's in that position is look to differentiate yourself and look to grow fast. Sometimes growing fast means partnering up with others, merging or combining with others, but this is a race. And don't be naive in thinking that you can organically grow this and think that you're going to be, a giant player 3 or 4 years from now. If you want to grow and you want to be a significant player in this market, you need capital, yes, but you also need relationships to get big fast. Whether that is buying other companies if you can, or doing joint ventures or combinations, whatever that takes. You're going to get capital faster, you're going to grow faster, you're going to be successful if you combine with others. And that's one thing that our firm does, is we're involved in mergers and acquisitions, but any firm, there's 100 firms that you can go to work with on strategic growth.
Look, let me just say one more thing, then we can change the topic. It is incredibly hard to raise money. Let me strip out any illusion any other way. Raising money, whether you have a business, whether you're starting a business, whether you're a big company, small company, whether you're in cannabis, opening a bar, or creating a delivery business for, soda. It is incredibly hard to raise money. Know that you're going to have to pitch 100 people to get 1 or 2, and just know that going in, but also know that lots of people before you have done the exact same thing. But it is a slog, it takes persistence, and a whole lot of self-confidence to get up every morning.
It's not that hard. It's not that hard. You got New York State and New Jersey State. I said before, they don't have cannabis industry yet. You are on the cusp if you've got a license. And if you've got retail already open up, there'll be money for that. You just have to know where to find it. My first investor was my ex-wife. It was a circle of love. We're great friends, but she was the very first investor. My friends at the time were all quite a bit older than me. I couldn't get a penny out of them. The stigma was still there. That stigma has been chipped away at and been removed, so the opportunity to tell the story on how big it is, it's a big story. And I don't think it's being told enough on how big this market is. You got 20-something million people in the state of New York, and a lot of them smoke weed. It's the same per capita as it is in Cali. And there's no access to it. There's no cultivation of big weed here yet. There's no retail gray market. Like in Vancouver, there used to be more dispensaries than there were Starbucks. Okay, that doesn't have to happen here. You're on the ground floor. Don't be afraid. Bang on the doors. Attend these. Make friends at these things. Pass out that card. Get a QR code that explains who you are. Those are cool things now. My QR code is going to go up at the end. I don't have to pitch you. Have a look at it later. Take a picture of my QR code. They're cool. Right? Boom, you're in the investment deck. And then you can talk about life and kids and family and friends. That's what you need to do. You need to be out there.
Hang on just a second, Terry. We got somebody over here.
So I have a company called Bake Farm, and I want to open up 3 dispensaries here in New York City. And I'm a service-disabled veteran, and I just received the veteran status for my business. So I'll be part of that social equity program. But to respond to Mr. Daniels' point, I mean, you ask, who has a business, who's currently, having revenue with their business, and a lot of people didn't raise their hands because I think the recreational business is still going through the process, right? The New York State has not given out licenses yet. So I think a large part of your comments have to do on the macro level or investing on Wall Street. But a lot of us, as mentioned, are small business. We want to open up our own business. But my question is, I'm here to seek funding for my dispensaries, and when would an investor most likely willing to fund a startup, a new company? Would it be during the application process? Because during that process, it would really help if you had money in the bank, right? If you had $1 million, or if you already have investors, or would it be after you get the license, right? Because I've also encountered some investors, and they say, "Well, come back to me once you get the license," right? And that's not going to help me, I think.
Sure. I think the way to think about it, if I understood the question correctly, and there's no exact answer, right? Think about it on, again, I use the term carburetor, where it's sort of a mix of a couple of things. But what you want to do, as much as you can, is de-risk the investment for a potential investor. If you're pre-licensed, that means getting that license is a huge risk. That's going to have a material impact on your valuation from day one. If you have the license, okay, that takes out a big risk. The next big risk is opening up your first store. So the answer is bootstrap as much of it, or raise from friends and family as much as you can, and de-risk it. Because again, it's credibility and how much risk. So if it's still risky because you haven't had a license awarded, well, your business is worth, let's say, $5 million. I'm making up numbers. If you have the license, the business becomes worth $10 million. If you have a store open and operating, it's probably worth 15. Again, orders of magnitude, don't use these numbers, but basically the more you can do that, and the more that you can demonstrate that you've been to deliver against your business plan. Phase 1, get a license, phase 1, apply for a license, phase 2, get a license, phase 3, build your first store, hire a team. The more that you can do that, the better off you are. Happy to talk to you for a few minutes afterwards, but basically, as an investor sitting there, you sort of try to think, what are the things that are going to derail this? And as many of them you can eliminate, again, bootstrapping a little bit. That would be sort of my generic advice, I guess.
And along that note, we've pursued licenses now along with local partners. I think New York will be our 33rd state. And we know that there's going to be a subset of licenses, justice involved, set aside for those who have been incarcerated, negatively impacted by the war on drugs. And then there's going to be a subset of licenses, of course, for, call it the general population, right? We still don't know what that number is going to be. We still don't know what that application criteria is going to be. But if the state does have a requirement where they want to see a certain amount of capital in the bank in order to strengthen your points, strengthen your application, then sure, that's important. And there's a lot of ways, creative ways, in which you could show capital to the state. Now, in terms of raising money pre-license in a competitive license situation, it's pretty difficult. It's a unicorn because there's a lot of risk, right? And I've been doing this for 10 years, chasing licenses, and I always tell my best qualified groups, my best groups with the best connections, with the best expertise and the most capital, at most, they got a 50-50 shot of getting one of these licenses, because you just never know what's going to happen at the state level. So, early on, yeah, it's a lot of your own money, credit cards, friends and family.
Is access to the U.S. public markets dependent upon federal legalization?
Dependent on federal what?
Federal legal is
Yes,
access
yes.
to the U.S. markets dependent upon federal legalization?
Yes, it is. Yeah. This go public thing isn't how you start a business. You don't start out of the gate going public. You do need seed money. There's seed money companies out there for cannabis. Again, this state has a lot of opportunity. How many people have read the retail regs? That the application process, the applicant, the 51% owner, they're going to be hard to find. Why doesn't someone start a business on how to find those people? I'll pay you if you can find us the people that qualify, 100%. They're rare birds. They need to be brought into the space, and they need to really want to be in the space. It's not just, here's a check, thanks for owning 51. We want you to be involved in the retail space. We're already in the cultivation, so you can't do both in this state, but you could advise, and I think that has to happen at the state level real soon. You're starting to see sort of lame-ass sessions to some extent, but it's a start. How do you apply? It's only a couple of grand to get your application in. They're going to tell you why you didn't get it if you don't. You'll know then what you have to do to get that application in to get a license. There's about 150 of them up for grabs right now under the social equity program. And if you're looking at retail, get on it. It's time.
Hey guys, good afternoon. Just curious, I have a question for you guys. I want to get your opinion on this. Why do you think New York State excluded charged felonies and only included convicted felonies?
You have to be convicted.
Right, I'm just curious your opinion on why they excluded charged.
I think that, again, that's the disparagement. That the people that were convicted and incarcerated were wrongly done so to. There wasn't a bunch of white college kids that got charged, went to jail, or were convicted. This is about social equity, and it's about governance, and it's about opportunity, and it's about righting a wrong. So I can't tell you why the state did what they did.
Just wanted your opinion.
My opinion is they did the right thing.
Okay, no, I agree with that. I'm just wondering as to why people that were charged went through the system, paid what they needed to pay, did what they needed to do, had lawyers, went through all the process, lost their jobs just because they were charged, and they fought it and then beat it to not get convicted, and it was handled down to either a misdemeanor.
Convicted is worse than being charged, and there were more people of color that were convicted, right? And that's the answer here. You don't want to mess around and beat the bushes here. The fact is, people that were convicted were people of color by a significant amount. Significant. So I think that's why they made that step. If we just went with charged, we're opening up to hundreds of thousands. When you open it up to convicted, it's probably less than
charged
20,000.
felonies, I'm saying.
Pardon me?
But that charged felonies, not charged possessions.
Well, there's your other mistake, right? Making it a felony. Right? Expungement of records has got to happen eventually. And I think you'll see that at a federal level. When they legalize it, you'll see the expungement of the record. They're not going to, have a bunch of settlements, but at least it's off your back.
Okay. So the answer is there's just too many people that have been charged with felonies and weren't convicted, and that's why they're not opening up the licensing?
It's not that. Quite simply, if someone is charged but not convicted, then the issue is essentially over. The ancillary problems that come after that can be devastating. But as a matter of law, if you're charged but not convicted, end of the game. So those people who are benefiting from the social equity are people who were convicted.
I've come out of the medical program for 6 years, working in community outreach and patient relations. Stigma was the single biggest problem, without question, in terms of expanding the program, expanding access to patients. But now today, as I see it, the adult rec rollout. I think there are a ton of people who still command misinformation, judgment, assumption. There's a lot of stigma, and if I listen a lot to a lot of investment types of presentation, there's a lot of talk about a lot of money. There isn't always talk about the movement. The cannabis is also, it's a commercial enterprise, but it's also a movement involving communities. And I wonder on Wall Street, whether you've seen a significant shift or a move of the needle in terms of attitudes towards people involved in the industry, because I've seen a lot of bigotry there. And I just wondered if you guys could comment on that. Wall Street in general.
Great question. I think the stigma is getting knocked down every single day. I was involved in 25 different countries across the planet with respect to medical cannabis. I got involved in cannabis because of the medical advantage of a very safe product. You've got activists, you've got whacktivists, and you've got advocates. And those are three sets of people that you need to know. You need to be involved in the community. I think the people that survive in the cannabis space believe in the plant. It's not all about money. You have to have it in your core that this should have never been illegal, and it's an alternative medicine, and it's from God's great earth. It's a safe drug. The only way you can get killed from cannabis if a bale falls out of a plane and lands on your head and snaps your neck, right? That's not even meant to be funny. It's a very safe drug for many different reasons. The medical community is now catching up with the studies. I see the wave behind the medical space globally is getting bigger and bigger. The EU, bigger and bigger. There's like 35 countries now in the world that consider medical cannabis as an alternative medicine, and that's cool. Remember, there were none 10 years ago. There were none, right? So it's a wave that's not about to crash. It's going to keep on rolling here for many years to come. You have to believe in the plant. But yeah, I get it. Does Wall Street have a stigma? They have a stigma with everything, right? It's up to it's really each individual's opinion. But I don't think the big bankers even look at stigma. They look at money. If they can make money on it, they're in. And that's why a lot of them have left the party. I think by nature they're not wanting to work as hard as they should, right? They want to do the easy deals, get their commissions, move on. And that's why out of the public markets, it's really left stable unless you're creative deals, unless you're making money. Cash flow positive, EBITDA positive. That's impossible at this stage for most of you, to get cash flow positive. So you need those family, friends, and associates. Everybody forgets that. These are all associates in this room.
Hold on, Terry. We got one more we got one more person out there for a question, and then we got to wrap it up.
I think we should maybe let the banker answer the question. Somebody
Please do.
I think that'd be beneficial.
Well, I mentioned earlier, and I'm just going to reemphasize, that Wall Street is about building businesses, large, very efficient, industry-leading businesses. So if you look around you, there's a lot of people here who want to start a business. Okay, there's out of maybe 60 people in the room who want to start a business, there are going to be maybe 3 that 3 years from now will have the generated revenue and reach milestones that will then get Wall Street behind them and put serious money to work, and they will get even bigger. So that's why I mentioned earlier, my best advice to you if you're at an early stage is collaborate, combine, work with others, this is a race for who can get bigger faster, because whoever that is wins. And you can stay small if you want, but then you're going to have a small mom and pop shop that there are hundreds and thousands of those. If you want gigantic success and you want Wall Street backing, that's what you have to do. So I mentioned earlier State Stox and State Stox mission. We're looking for those 3 people, and we would look to back them early, and probably other people on this panel would tell you the same, because people want to find who those people are. The sooner that they identify who those people are, the sooner they will place bets on those people. But to the point of my fellow panelists, you have to show that you're that person. You have to come up to one of us and say, hey, I've got the fire in my belly to make this thing work. And I'm going to be the one to lead in New York State 3 years from now. If you think that you can be that leader, raise your hand right now. And if you don't, then you should probably not be here.
Chip, I got a question for you regarding the capital markets.
Folks. Hold on just a minute. You're up next. We do have one more person who's out there waiting, but hold on, sir. Let them finish this conversation, and then we'll get to you and we'll wrap it up. Okay. Thanks, everybody. It's all you. Go for it.
So, Chip, I want to ask you a question because you're the Wall Street guy. I'm the weed guy, and it's great. Here we are meeting up here. Weed meets Wall Street, right here, you guys. So, I have seen Wall Street, again, NASDAQ back U.S. cannabis companies. On the ancillary side, I'm just going to throw some examples out here. I've seen NASDAQ and Wall Street back Canna, which was MJ Freeway. Canna's never made a dime of profit in 10, 11, 12 years of operation. And I've seen Wall Street back what I mentioned earlier, this Bright Green Cannabis, which is a zero revenue company. So my question is, there's some great companies here.
Let me stop you right there. That's a SPAC. That company is not, their investors there are not backing an actual company. They're backing a potential future acquisition of a company that may or may not come about. And it's a strange Wall Street phenomenon, what's called a special acquisition, it's a SPAC, special purchase acquisition company. And those companies are very different from operating companies. So it's there are some companies that specialize in building SPACs, and I don't want to spend any time on that. The company that you mentioned, Hutton, does specialize in doing that.
But my question for you is, when is Wall Street going to get behind some of these great American companies, Cresco, GTI, Curaleaf, Trulieve? When is Wall Street going to back them?
I'll take a stab at that one, and I think it also relates to the original question, which is, I don't know that there's an issue of stigma on Wall Street. I think the word is compliance. Wall Street is in many ways very, very risk adverse, and in order for Wall Street to really buy in, to really completely commit to all of this, I think the compliance challenges have to be decreased. They have to know that they can take the money in, that they're not going to have an issue with their regulators. So I think that's really, to a large extent, what's holding Wall Street back right now. It's not stigma, it's compliance.
I agree with that. And it's also, Wall Street is not itself, other than within fintech, does not innovate itself. I mentioned earlier one of the problems is that New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ have gotten so big in the last 20, 25 years that they don't fund smaller and mid-size, what are called mid-cap and small-cap companies anymore. And so there has to be another mechanism for doing that. And that's our innovation at State Stocks, by the way, is to bring that type of exchange that can identify and generate and direct capital to earlier stage companies like this.
Go ahead, sir. What was your question?
Thank you. My name is Chuck Miller. I'm with Engenix Energy Solutions. We invest in energy infrastructure in the cannabis space, basically owning their energy assets. And with the volatility of energy right now, prices going through, if we've seen new entrants into the market going out of business just because they can't pay their utility bills. How do you guys evaluate, what's your opinion on the risk associated with energy costs, and in a model where we could share risk by owning energy assets as part of the capital stack that they're making investment with an investor, would you consider that de-risking the overall project or the overall company?
Sure, I'll take that. I have some experience in cultivation facilities. For sure, it's also a little thing called ESG, right?
Yeah, I know that.
Right, sustainable governance, environment. Whatnot. Big companies are checking their boxes on that right now.
Yeah.
I think you have to be environmentally responsible. Some of the states are plugging it in to it. So you need Mother Nature in some cases, the sunshine, solar power, wind power. You need to not throw all your extra water on the ground. You need to pull it, get it recirculating, try to get 80-90% recovery on water systems. So that's technology. Sounds like you're into that technology and the energy around it. So that's an excellent space in this space because cannabis burns a lot of power, a lot, and is the carbon footprint large? It is if you're lit up indoor compared to a greenhouse or an outdoor, right? So I think energy plays a big part in the go forward.
Yeah.
Okay, the economics of it are that it affects everyone. All boats rise and fall. However, to the extent that you become more efficient at energy conservation or energy use, you gain a competitive advantage versus your peers. And so that's why companies that succeed are continuously improving whatever operations or processes they have. And the folks on this stage and the folks on Wall Street look for those relentless entrepreneurs and business managers who look to drive costs as low as possible while they drive revenue.
Yeah, I was going to say that at the end of the day, for us, it's just COGS, right? But cold-hearted SOB investors, like we just know what's it going to cost you to grow that gram. I think technology will come in. I do think that improved HVAC systems, I think there are ways. I think cogen is probably a terrific opportunity, maybe some on site. Yes, green energy. At the end of the day, we look at as investors, what does it do to your costs, and then what does it do to the money in pockets of your potential consumers?
Yeah, that's where we focus. We do a lot of cogen with some of the bigger players, but now we're trying to bring it to even the smaller players, because what we can provide is stability. The energy markets are just going crazy, and given some predictability to those costs, knowing what you're going to pay for the next 5 years gives you kind of a big leg up in getting to that profitability.
And that for a company who is operating or is raising money, that's a compelling pitch to somebody to sort of say, I can either help you keep this fixed or within a relative range so you don't get huge swings, or I can help you bring the number down. Both of those to me is a compelling pitch to somebody building a facility.
Absolutely. I'm glad we're on the same page.
All right, folks. We have just made it right on time. I was worried we were going to go a little bit too long, but we've made it. So thank you all. I'm sure if you stick around, you might be able to get a little bit more insight from our guests here. Thanks for all of your questions, and we'll be back up with our next panel in just a few minutes. Thanks very much.
Thank you.